Good morning. We'll call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order on Friday, September 4th at just 10 a.m. Ms. Rukowski, would you like to call roll?
Mayor Lake?
Here.
Councilman Brown?
Here.
Thank you. Are there any public comment cards?
We have no public comment cards at this time.
Okay, so let's jump to it. Item 1 is the fiscal year ending 2021 budget review.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share so that we can talk about these budgets in order, if that's okay, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely.
All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is truly a working meeting today. There's a couple of questions that came out of the project meeting that we had last week, and so we'll go through those as we attack each budget. This year I have written the proposed budget on the side of our year-to-date on our financials so that you can see what we've done and where we're at. Hopefully this will help alleviate some of the questions as we move through this, starting with the lakes. Currently, in our lakes account, we have about $41,000. A motion was made by the council to not bring in that transfer this current fiscal year. I really need to know if it's council's desire to bring in a transfer to bring that back up to $50,000 for the next fiscal year, or if we want to stay at a balance of right around $40,000 until we know of a project partnering with Save Our Lakes or St. Johns River Water Management District.
Well, we still don't know what we don't know in going into a second fiscal year, hopefully after recovering from COVID.
Well, and I can tell you as we move through these budgets, we'll see that we've got about $12,000 without this transfer in general fund, but we do have a lot of projects, and that's not including any asks that came in for events from the meeting last week, because those are conversations we'll have to have today on where to put them. We talked a little bit about if it's going to be within the agency or if it's going to be within general fund, what that looks like, and then really have a conversation about specific projects and how we'll fund them this coming fiscal year.
Mr. Brown, you have any feelings about whether to go back?
Lynn, the main thing we've been using that money for is down at the beach.
That's correct. So the money.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
yes.
Yes, that's for the beach. We've been using that to clean out our beach area, our swimming area. And then any other projects or events that bring awareness to the Save Our Lakes organization and the partnership with the city of Keystone Heights.
I personally, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm having internet connection problems. I think $41,000 for the next year is a pretty good bank account. And instead of bringing that back up to 50, I think we might need to just hold it off from where it is right now. We don't have any major project that we know of that's coming out of Save Our Lakes or St. John's Water Management right now for the next fiscal year, do we?
Not that I'm aware of. There are some things that could potentially be lining up. Now, understand we can always do a budget amendment if there's funding that's is needed from this account.
And I think that's where we can go with it. I think we can be in flex. 41,000, I agree with Mr. Brown that's a healthy balance. The intention is to fulfill our responsibilities should they need the money. And if we needed to make a budget amendment to bring it up to 50, we could do that.
Okay, so with the current budget, we have about $350 coming in from interest. We spend about $2,000 annually to clean up the beach to take care of the vegetation that's within there. That's the only projects that I anticipate at this moment. With that being said, are we okay to move on?
Let me ask you this. If we spend the 2,000 on the beach and that takes it down to 39,000?
That's correct.
So rather, can we remain revenue neutral and keep it at 41,000 by transferring in the 2,000?
Sure. Okay.
Mr. Brown, would you agree with that? I'm not sure you heard me. Mr. Brown, did you hear?
I'm good.
Do you want to keep that
Yes,
right around $41,000?
I'm having a problem.
Okay. Can you hear us okay, Councilman Brown?
Yes, I'm gonna move to closer to my boxes, internet
Okay.
boxes.
All right, we'll take a small tour with Councilman Brown.
Okay, let's go
No, I'm
through.
fine. You can travel with me.
Where are we now, Tony? Are we in the kitchen?
I'm in the kitchen. Don't look at my junk. All right, let's see if, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Nice family picture behind you there, Mr. Brown.
Oh, let me block that out. That's back when I had hair. Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
So just to confirm, you're okay if we transfer in $2,000 to make that account revenue neutral at
Yes,
41?
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Next, we'll move on to the cemetery. Okay, so in the project, and I apologize, I was told that I would have a layout to share for the budget and finance meeting. However, our engineering company ran into a couple of hiccups. However, we will bring that to council on September 10th. But moving forward with the vision of the cemetery, as I said, it's going to take about $75,000 to build the first niche or ossuarium, the wayfinding system within the cemetery, helping take care of the soft sand on the one area over towards the old side, signage and redoing some of those roads so that we can extend some of our gardens. That total this year would be about $75,000. The engineering company is still waiting on quotes coming back for the ossuarium, so I don't have an exact price on what that's going to be versus the revenue that we'll generate from it. However, I did go ahead and include it just so that you can see what that's going to look like moving forward. So if we transfer in $62,000, and then we'll have to talk about where you want that to come from. If you want it to come from our reserves, if you want it to come from our perpetual care that's in the cemetery, but that's from an outside revenue source, then we will bring in about $99,000, right around $100,000 for this year. If you go down to the expense, we do have our audit, computer software, equipment purchases, the legal expenses, and things of that nature. I've also added in about $75,000, just north of $75,000 for the improvements of the cemetery moving forward this year, which will bring a balanced budget of that just south of $99,000 or $100,000. So the conversation today for the Budget and Finance Committee is really one, do you want to move forward with this plan in its entirety this coming fiscal year? Or, and take that large chunk of about $75,000 that it's going to cost to do the first ossuarium, and then bring our the Keystone Memorial up to a wayfinding system. And then if so, where would you like that revenue to or that income to come from?
It's a good question. I think at a 40,000 foot level, I'd like to have a conversation with Mr. Brown about the number of projects we're going to be giving Ms. Rakowski to complete this year. This is a big project. And if we're going to do it, I really want to do it well. But I also don't want to give Ms. Rakowski more than she can handle in 1 year, especially with, you know, taking care of all these projects with the CARES Act. So realistically, Mr. Brown, what do you think?
Well, I personally rather just go ahead and get it all done and be done with it so we don't piecemeal anything. Because, and I say this very respectfully on all of the council, if the one thing you see in government, if another group of people come in and don't like the plans that the past has done, they might scrap it, and then you got a cemetery that's halfway done. And I think with the council that we have right now, I think we're all on. I feel like we're all on board, and just go ahead and do it and get it done, and just give it a big wham.
I agree with you. I say if we're going to do it, we do it, and we do it well.
Right.
But if we're going to bring on this project, then I think we have to look realistically at other projects very carefully to make sure we're not giving Ms. Rakowski more than she can successfully complete.
Well, Madam Chair, I apologize.
Wouldn't something like this, Kenny would be the one out in the field overseeing it? Or is that, I mean, I know the manager's the manager, but would that be like delegated to him as the public works supervisor to do that? To help you out?
So yes, this would be something that would be the day-to-day would be handled by our public works supervisor. I will say this though, is that we are shorthanded out there as well, as we don't have the capability of our 10 inmates. However, of all the projects that we have on our plate for this coming fiscal year, and we'll talk about that more as we enter into our agency's budget, into our general fund, this one I feel is more of a turnkey. The staff time after marking each lot in the cemetery is going to be minimal. This is something that will be hired out. We will not be setting the ossuarium. That will be contracted out, and so it's more of a supervised, blueprinted plan, if you will, as opposed to figuring out the nuts and bolts of that work's already been done. And as you'll see, is when it's provided by the engineer, we do have a detailed plan set in place, so it's something easy to follow by someone outside of our employees, because it's a lot of work that we won't be able to do.
All right, well, if we're gonna, as Mr. Brown says, if we're gonna adopt it, I feel like what he said is true. I don't want to leave anything open for another future council to deliberate over. If we've decided this is a project we want to do, let's do it well, and let's do it all at once.
I agree.
So Ms. Rakowski, if another council member agrees, you got yourself a new project.
Fair enough. Now let's talk about that $62,000 that we're not going to generate, or that we're not projected to generate off our revenue. This is a project that's going to require some outside funding assistance. Currently, at the moment, in our checking account, and I say our checking account versus our CDs, we have about $83,000 in our perpetual care account, because Mr. Cornegay did negotiate a fantastic interest rate, and we were able to move $50,000 into a CD. We do have two in the next month and a half, which will total right about $150,000.
What is the percentage that we're getting on those? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Okay. It's probably not much.
I will find out though.
And
We
what do
also,
we have in reserves?
and then we have, we sit at about $300,000 in reserves from our general fund.
Tell you what, that's a lot of money compared to what we started at when we started the cemetery.
No, that's the $300,000. That's our general fund reserves. That's
Okay.
Cemetery.
So we have 83,000 in the checking account now.
We
And
have
the perpetual,
we have about $150,000 in CDs that are going to mature within the next month and a half. And then decision needs to be made if we're going to pull that into our perpetual care account or if we're going to roll it over.
Oh boy.
And this isn't necessarily a decision that we have to make right now. We can put it in the budget, and that's something that we can discuss as we move forward through the fiscal year. Again, we can do budget amendments if this is decided that it's a project that you want to wait or piece out.
The 83,000 that's in the checking, that is what pays out for staff to go out there and no.
That is in our perpetual care account. So every year we take $7,200 out of our operating expenses for the cemetery and put it into our perpetual care account. That's our long-lasting account. In our actual cemetery account, give me just 1 second.
Okay, I see that.
Our operating account for our cemetery, we have about $159,000. So you're in good financial shape right now with your cemetery. It's just a matter on where you want to move this money from.
And as soon as that structure is built and we start doing sales, you're going to accumulate that money in sales, because I'm gonna guarantee you that thing's going to sell fast. I really feel like it's going to sell fast.
Okay, that's accurate. We will be able to sell as soon as that structure is put in place.
Mayor, can I speak out loud? Think out loud. I'm just thinking, if we have $100,000 in CDs, and this project is what, $75,000? You're saying?
Yes.
Okay. If we find out that we're not making that big a percentage off those CDs, when those mature, could we just use that money for this project? And then what? Pardon me?
You could potentially use that money. However, right now, as we stand, we could roll over our CDs. We have $159,000 in our cemetery operating account, and then we have $83,000 in our perpetual care account. What I'm showing you is that we will not generate enough revenue from sales to make this self-sufficient this project self-sufficient as we had in years past. We're going to have to pull money from somewhere else.
So can we take a little bit here and take a little bit there, where we don't take it all from one account?
I think rolling over the CDs and allowing that money to continue to earn money for itself would be my preference. And I think we take the money out of the operating account.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I'm just thinking out loud, which is scary sometimes.
Well, that money is making interest. While it's not a lot, it's still earning interest.
Right.
So if y'all are okay with that, that's the kind of discussion we can have with council when we bring this budget to them.
I'm good. I'm good with that.
Okay. All right. Anything else in the cemetery budget, Ms. Rakowski?
So that is the cemetery budget. Everything else is pretty much recurring. Oh. Yes.
Oh, never mind. This is the next one. Never mind.
Everything else is reoccurring from next year, or from previous years. And so if are there any other questions that the Budget and Finance Committee has regarding the cemetery account?
I have none.
No, I'm good with the cemetery.
Okay.
I have some conversation for you though with the CRA.
All right, well then let's move on to the CRA. All right, so at our current millage rate, which was adopted as our maximum millage rate, we'll be looking at bringing in about $24,000 from the cities and then about $40,000 from the county. We have, right now, we're sitting right at about $100,000 in our agency's checking account, if you will, with looking at about $700 in interest. I put 90,000 just for budgetary purposes. So we were sitting at about $155,000 in our agency's account. You go through, we put in the same things every year and make sure if there's any advertising that's going to be done, the insurance and liability, which will be transferred over. You can see it hasn't been transferred over yet, but it will be transferred over here within the next week. $200 for memberships. These are.
What is that membership? Can you share what that is?
The Florida Redevelopment Agency, and so we are part of a bigger organization.
Okay.
And then going down to our contracted services, we have about $1,800 that goes to our auditor. The council heard the EDC and asked to see what the budget looked like with a $2,000 donation or $2,000 buy-in into the EDC. We have $5,000 in legal fees to keep ourselves out of trouble. The SBDC is getting $1,000, and those are who we partner with. Now, I'm going to skip events and festivals for just a moment because that's a larger conversation. But if we go down to the CIP, I budgeted $25,000, the same carry forward from years past that we looked at the possibility of a match for grants. In the past, we weren't awarded those for the feasibility study. And then the council, the agency decided to budget $25,000 for any improvements or any studies that needed to be done to improve the pavilion. Well, we were fortunate enough to be able to utilize that as a secondary food distribution. So we're accumulating, we're getting a lot of money from the CARES Act. However, like, as I said, there's going to be things that's going to come up that the CARES Act does not cover, or things that would be nice to have. And so I've put in the $25,000 cushion so that we can add on once this project is done to really make it something useful for the needs of Keystone Heights. We have $30,000 to move forward with the Rails to Trails. And we had talked about that project in its entirety. We're still moving forward with the grant process. And so we'll be seeing that coming this current fiscal or the next fiscal year, I apologize. And then the large is $60,000 into our streetscape improvements. This is where we see our Wi-Fi zones come out of and any additional security cameras, as well as any softscapes that will benefit our, I'm looking at the picture and not the camera, that will benefit our businesses downtown as we complete the 2020 vision. So are there any questions or conversations on that chunk of the budget? And then we'll start talking about events.
So the $25,000 study, that was for when we were talking about putting the second story on the pavilion, correct? And we're just carrying that, bringing that money forward.
Yes.
Okay. So that basically is a nice cushion in case we want to do anything additional, like, for example, what if we needed to buy furniture for this new community center? Are we going to be able to do it with some of this money?
Absolutely. If it's something that's going to be beneficial to our agency, to our community redevelopment area, then we can spend that money. And I believe that however we are going to utilize this building, as it's not being used as a secondary food distribution point, will benefit our businesses.
Okay. And of course, I support the Wi-Fi zone. So I'm cool with this chunk. I mean, I think these are really important projects for us moving forward, especially for our business district.
Lynn, the project that Councilman Peoples was talking about doing an over like a roof on top of the deck where the bands always sit and
Yes,
play.
yes.
Is that in the CRA or is that in something else that we've looking at?
Well, that could be either or. We do have a good amount of money that I've budgeted into our parks in the general fund. And we can talk about some of the improvements and those conversations and put it in there. This is something that we can rearrange money within our agency if you believe that it's going to be a benefit to our businesses in the downtown area to add on a band show. That sounds a little bit more like a fun event than it is for a business. So I brought that. We do have funding that we can talk about in our parks budget within the general fund.
Okay.
And honestly, I think that's, to keep us legally safe, I think that's a better choice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And the Wi-Fi, did we ever find out if there's anybody around our area that's doing that downtown?
There are a couple open internet. It's not something as substantial as the vision that we have here in Keystone Heights. But there are communities, there are cities that do offer open Wi-Fi near their pavilions or their community centers, but not something this substantial.
And it would be, like you said before, that it would be cut off at a certain time at night?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can totally control it. And I've actually spoken with several business owners downtown, and they're very excited about this project. So.
Okay. The fireworks for 4th of July, never mind. We're going back to that. Never mind.
Yes. So this, as it stands right now, we'll have about $4,100. Now understand that I don't anticipate the full $30,000 being used for the trailhead, or the possibility of $60,000 being ready to be used this coming fiscal year, depending on when the project's going to be completed for the streetscape. But with this budget as it is right now, we have approximately $4,100 that we have left in the budget. So talking about events, we really don't know what those events are going to look like. I can tell you that our streets will not be done until spring of next year. So downtown is going to look similar to what it does right now throughout the remainder of this project. Once we're done with the CARES Act, which will close out at the end of November, there's still going to be improvements that we haven't thought about that are unforeseen to our parks. There's still going to be items that the city would like to add in as additional pluses, as addition to our parks as we go through this transition, as we go through this construction, that won't be covered by the CARES Act, but we can add above and beyond with our own funds. And so with that being said, things like the Christmas parade and Embrace, those are items that if they're not going to take place within our agency, we can't fund them within the agency's budget. And it's really a conversation on it's up to the budget and finance and then back to council on if you fund them, how you fund them, and what that looks like.
Well, let me jump in here really quickly, because with the 4150 that you're looking to identify, I want to make sure that the beach fence is included someplace.
That's going to we'll talk about that in parks.
In parks, okay, cool. So, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to shut anybody down, but realistically, until, some point in the future, are we really going to be able to safely say we can pull people downtown and have a parade? I know that John Ward is working with a group of people to do a movie night down at the beach where they're creating little circles where families of four can sit together in a circle at the beach, and they're spacing those apart. But when I think about doing that for a parade, I don't know that we put a lot of responsibility on the city for us to try and safely stage a parade. And so, Mr. Brown, what do you think? You've been in public safety longer than me.
I will say, public safety wise, if that area is going to be still tore up like it is right now, at Christmas time, there's no way we're going to have a parade downtown, because you're not just dealing with COVID, you're dealing with people walking and tripping and falling over stuff, and then you got lawsuits. And I mean, we've been sued before for somebody just tripping over a sidewalk downtown. That was years ago. So I don't foresee having a Christmas parade. Now, Patricia had mentioned something, or Councilman or Vice Mayor Hart had mentioned something about an alternative Christmas parade through the neighborhood or something. I haven't heard anything about that, but that's going to, like the manager said, that's going to be out of our CRA district, and we can't fund anything that's outside that CRA district with CRA money.
I agree. I mean, that would be reason for the state to come in and look at us and say, you can't do that.
Definitely.
So there are other potential concerns with holding a Christmas parade through the neighborhoods that will if Kiwanis chooses to move forward, but that'll have to be funded out of your general fund if you choose to fund security. That'll have to be funded out of our operating budget.
Okay, so I think for now, from what I'm hearing from Mr. Brown, we're not going to fund any events until our traffic and our traffic patterns are returned to normal. So we'll look at those out of the general fund. We'll leave the CRA alone. Is that right, Mr. Brown?
Oh yeah, we don't want to get in trouble. It's pretty strict on what we can do with this money. Just
so
like
the 7,500 is future forward. I feel comfortable with the 4th of July event, and I feel comfortable with funding Kiwanis's 4th of July parade.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lions event, I believe Ms. Franklin said she's not hosting it this year, so we're not going to be providing security for Boo on the Boulevard.
Right.
The only other ask that we had was from Embrace and they weren't going to necessarily do an event. They were just doing Christmas gifts. And so again, that's something that I don't know. I don't believe that we can cover out of our agency's budget. That would, if you choose to fund something like that, that would have to come out of our operating expense, and that's going to be a different conversation entirely.
Let me speak to that real quick. I don't know if I stepped out of order, but I did talk to Ms. Franklin about the concerns that I had about that money is supposed to be for public safety, for CRA and stuff when we do events like that. And that the first year was apparently we had agreed to help out to get them started, but we cannot really just, that money has always been for public safety to help pay for the deputies and stuff, if I'm remember right. But here again, we're on a thin line when we start buying stuff for presents and stuff like that, and not strictly sticking to what the funds are have always been for public safety, for paying for the deputies and stuff.
I agree. I think we opened the door to a larger issue. If we were buying gifts, why would we not buy gifts for people who lived inside city limits?
I'd go back several years ago. We used to go back when Project Graduation first started, Mayor, was a big thing. And each council person took about $500 out of their contingency and gave for that project, which was a very good project. But after a while, we were told, I mean, we shouldn't be doing that basically. So we stopped that. We don't give to that project anymore out of our contingency.
Yeah, it's it's a worthwhile cause, but
Oh, yeah.
when you're the trustee of public money, I think
Exactly.
you have to think about those funds differently than if it were coming from your own pocket.
Yes.
So for right now, let's move on past the Embrace event until we get to the general fund. And then if you want to talk about it again there, because I know we're all supportive, but I know Mr. Brown brought this to us.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then I have $5,000 written into the budget for events. Madam Mayor, we've had conversations about once everything calms down with our streetscapes, really inviting the businesses down. Council had a conversation about doing a survey within the businesses and really starting to build that relationship between the city and their businesses. I've also budgeted $15,000 for seasonal decorations, because with our new streetscapes, that's going to come purchase of new holiday decorations and things like that. And then I can move the remainder $4,100 into that category as well, so that we can help with the 4th of July festivities. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. I see you have the 5,000 for the business support. That's the event we talked about after the streetscape, correct?
That's going to be for that event and any other event that might come up that will, if I'll give you an example, if all the businesses downtown decide that they want to do something collectively, then the city can come in and partner with that, and we can help fund, an example, safety and security. Those are the ideas behind the agency.
Yes.
And so we try to budget funds every year for that. And given the Keystone, the city stepping into that role a little bit more, I've budgeted more.
And Mr. Brown, I kind of want to give you a little bit of background there. I've had several conversations with Ms. Rakowski about bolstering the business community after the streetscape and the FDOT work is done, and hosting an open house event. And what I'd like to do is partner with Ms. Rakowski. We want to go to small towns like Micanopy, High Springs. We want to talk to their businesses downtown and offer them an opportunity to come in to Keystone Heights once all of it is done, to look at our downtown, to try and reproduce or recreate that type of ambiance downtown, and maybe expand their businesses here. And so we're going to be doing some road trips, I hope, in the near future, and go talk to some businesses. What do you think?
It's a good idea. I was going to say that, after all this is over, we have like a grand opening of our downtown.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And if you tie that all together, I think that's an awesome idea.
And that way we can help promote our businesses, but also ask other businesses to come in and help us recreate what we want.
And I think you ought to do it in the evening when the street lights are all on, make it really look good.
And the beach is all lit up.
Yeah.
We got a beautiful beach.
Yep.
So that's kind of where we're headed. That's the conversations we've been having. Okay, are you ready to move into the general fund, Ms. Rakowski?
Yes, ma'am. All right. I apologize for the small print in your handouts. That was a difficult one to maneuver last night. We're looking at the proposed millage rate of 4.2901, which is our current rate. Property taxes have went up a little bit more, so our annual budgeted amount, based on what we were given from the property appraiser, will bring in about $276,000. The next categories, the gas tax, utility tax, and so on and so forth, those are all budget, those are given to us. These are real estimate numbers. And you can see how it compares to the numbers that we budgeted this year. COVID's going to take an effect into our gas tax by a lot. And then our utility tax as well. Moving down, everything is pretty, it's all fixed. It's pretty consistent from year to year. So with that being said, are there any questions on our revenue for this coming fiscal year?
Let's see, the state contracts are pretty much still the same for the FDOT right-of-ways and that kind of thing?
That's correct.
I don't have any questions on income. Mr. Brown, do you have any questions on income?
No.
Okay. Moving down, we've got payroll services. This stays pretty much the same as it does year to year. There's an increase in council. Staff is remaining the same because we're going to be bringing some more additional staffing in. And those will be conversations that I have as council as we move forward through this fiscal year. The need of a grant writer and someone to carry on the project management is someone that we really do need in this office. So I'll start having conversations with council on what that looks like so we can outline that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
A project manager, what would their duties be?
Well, that's something that it's still a work in progress. However, I feel that it goes hand in hand with a grant writer. And we've talked about a grant writer
Okay.
being a contractor, but really take on city projects and see them through. And so they can manage the funding that comes in as we partner with FDOT, or if we partner, such as the streetscapes, there's a lot of moving parts that Mr. Cornegay was able to negotiate, and being able to follow those funding sources and make sure that things are completed.
What kind of background do you see this person having? Would it be a construction background?
No, not a construction background at all. It would be someone who's capable of handling projects, that has more of a municipal background, that understands the relationships between a municipality and other partnering agencies such as FDOT, someone who can work with the EDC when they go out and apply on the city's behalf for a grant, such as the airport, to have those kinds of relationships.
Okay.
So it's a little bit larger than a grant writer, because some of these are not grant, they're just funding, they're partnering opportunities.
Okay.
Working with St. Johns River Water Management District and really following that money and then following those projects and developing those relationships. And so we'll talk more sooner rather than later on what that looks like, because we've had conversations in the past about it being a contracted employee, which would require us to go out for an RFQ. And we'll work together on what that's going to look for the best interest of the city.
Okay.
Those are a lot of words to say that I've included that into our payroll staff at this time. And so our public works and then parks, these are all, it's pretty consistent year to year. Are there any questions for page 1?
I
don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to page 2. Again, this is pretty consistent from year to year. Our contingencies, insurances, city hall and equipment and things of that nature. I've combined lines moving forward for this fiscal year from city hall supplies and city hall equipment. It's kind of one and the same, so we're just going to put it in the same line item.
I see you dropped your own contingency fund.
Yes, so a lot of the memberships will come out of city hall memberships in general, things like Rotary and partnering with the KLRBA and things like that. That all comes out of city hall because it's somebody from the city can represent, not just myself.
Okay, cool. I like the change.
Council's contingencies remain the same. Because until we know what happens with COVID, I'm not entirely sure when things are going to start opening back up and we can actually go meet people in person.
I know, right? It'll make me sad though if I don't get to go to EMO 4.
I've got to call into that. So we'll that's something I should have by next week and answer for you.
Okay, cool.
City hall maintenance, that's postage. That's all the same from year to year. Going down to professional services, as you can see here, originally there was $5,000 budgeted in consulting fees. That's where we were going to take the grant writer. However, in the conversation I just had of kind of expanding that, I've taken that down to 0 and added money into the city hall staff.
Okay.
Until we can get an idea of what that's going to look like. Everything else remains the same. Our special magistrate, I'm sure that he's very eager to come to Keystone Heights. However, our code enforcement officer is fantastic. Lakes, right here, that will have an addition of the $2,000 that we talked about at the beginning of this meeting. Are there any additional questions for page 2?
I don't have any.
No, I'm good.
Okay, moving on to page 3, safety and security, cemetery payroll. All this is pretty consistent throughout the year. Going down to public works, materials and supplies, there's a large jump of $40,000. I'll tell you, our public works crew is in need of a couple new lawnmowers and equipment this year. So that has been budgeted to bring that up. Signs and pavement markings, we talked about the adding of decorative street signs as we start moving through our 2020 vision. Then going down.
What line item was that, Ms. Lynn?
Which one?
The street signs, was it 541380?
541350, signs and pavement markings.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And the one that they just put on Garden Street is really nice. I like it.
Oh, y'all got a new sign.
Of course, we had the work sign.
Yeah, they have ordered more. I believe Peach Street before, the one right before that, that whole street will be replaced as well. It's just a matter of getting out there versus mowing at the moment.
Yeah, the grass is really growing.
We are blessed with all this rain.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Parks
So-
and Recreation, I think we're down to with the 20,000 on the materials and supply for the parks.
So there's $20,000. We spend between $5,000 and $9,000 every year, depending on what we do. And so we've got $20,000 budgeted for our parks for additional improvements. Now that would include a fence and the band shell. We can move that into the agency's budget, though I don't know that it should be there.
The fence was going to cost somewhere like 15,000.
It's going to cost about $12,000.
12,000.
Mm-hmm. And then we do have money in our reserves that we can bring forward if need be to continue on these projects.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
So coming down to the highlighted yellow, that $12,000, that's now $10,000, but that's, I don't want to say an additional time, but it's $10,000 that we don't have put into the budget at this moment because we do need to have a conversation about funding additional events. If you want to put that into parks so that we can move forward with the fence and the band shell.
Well, definitely want to move forward with the fence.
I'm kind of leaning, I mean, the band shell thing, that's one of the biggest complaints we always got when we had a band, and was the cover. And
my concern about the band shell cover is that I really worry that it's going to break the view of the lake, and that's, you know, that's the most important view we have coming through town. What's it going to look like?
If it's just that one square, you still can see the lake. I mean, we're not looking at closing the back of it up, are we? Is that?
Not to my knowledge. I believe that the picture that he had done was just it was a pavilion, if you will, an open pavilion.
Just a cover, nothing like what they have in Stark. Or we did some work downtown Gainesville the other day, and it was there at the Bo Diddley part. I mean, now we're not Gainesville and we don't have that kind of money, but that is a great band shell they got down there, but it's all metal. It's not, and I wouldn't want to invest any money in something that's going to rot in 10, 15 years and we have to replace it.
Well, let's get a picture of it. I don't know that I saw Mr. Peoples' picture. Do we have it?
It was in one of our council meetings. If you give me just one moment, let me pull that back up and I can share that. So with that being said, with the $10,000 that we have there, if I'm hearing correctly, we can put that into parks and then we can start talking about specific projects for those parks. and what those real costs are going to be. I know that we've gotten a couple of quotes in for the fence. We're looking at about $12,000 for that, but that was prior to COVID. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do two things. And then the band shell, the pavilion itself, I don't know that it would cost a whole lot of money. There was some electrical upgrade that I was told needed to be done for lights and sound systems and things of that nature that might cost a little bit of money, but we're already going to be improving our electrical for the Wi-Fi down there.
Okay.
So there,
I think
put that into parks.
I'm fine putting it into parks because, you know, it adds value. It's a cheaper investment and it adds value.
Can I was just going to say, you know, it wouldn't be prudent to purchase one of those big old tents that when we do have something down there, that tent can be put up temporarily for a band shell and then after the event taken down.
We have in the past, when the community band played down there, we have 2 of those 10 by 10 tents.
Right.
And those were placed with the chairs sitting underneath. One of the things that Councilman Peoples brought up is that he would like to add fans underneath the structure so that it can circulate the air and then have it powered a little bit better.
Yeah, that would be more because, you know, I have a love affinity for sail shades, and sail shades would be a very cheap way to, you know, you could take it up, put it down, you could just string it between trees. That's a cheaper way to do it, but I don't know. We can talk about it.
So, oh, hold on.
That's a lot of roof.
Screen share response. Let me open that back up. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
That looks a lot more substantial.
So that's, I mean, it
does look like it would, yeah, it does look like it would match the pavilion.
Right.
Now there's going to be added cost if we want to match it exactly as the cost of the pavilion right now. The food distribution site will have a metal roof and then we'll have the galvanized railings. It's not, this is shingled with the wooden, but.
Yeah, it would want to go with the metal roof to mimic what was over on the pavilion side. And I don't know that I personally don't know that I would want a railing around it because again, it detracts from the view of the lake. But if it's just a shell like that, I think something like that's fine. What do you think, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I do. I think it's something we need to look at because it's something that has been talked about for years. But I would say let's put the money in parks, like you were saying, Mayor, and it's something that we can talk about when kind of chew on it a little bit and kind of get a couple different diagrams of stuff that we might could
get a sketch of some other options.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to put the money in parks, Ms. Rakowski. That's where we want the money.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. I'll make sure that happens. Okay.
Also, can we go back, just revisit the one thing that we talked about earlier? I think we're going to find it in this year's budget to fix up that concrete pad out at Sunrise.
Yes. Actually, we're not at that line item yet.
Okay.
All right. Are you guys seeing the budget right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I started clicking stuff. I wanted to make sure. So that number is actually $10,000 due to moving it into lakes, and then that we're going to spend that into parks to make that a $30,000 line item. With all that being said, that's going to bring our operating expense out of our general fund. We haven't talked about any events taken out of our general fund, but if we move the entire $10,000, that'll bring our operating portion of our general fund to a zero balance. So I guess let's have a conversation right now about the events, if you want us to fund that out of general fund.
This is about the parade, just
our two asks for Christmas.
So it'd be the Christmas parade and the Embrace event.
That's correct.
Well, I truly believe that, you know, if we need to provide security for the Embrace event, that we can do that. I'm not comfortable with spending money on gifts.
And
but
then go ahead.
They would still have to have the event inside the city limits if it's being done with tax dollars.
Correct.
So, and what kind of, I don't know, did they even have law enforcement there last year? I don't remember. I mean, I was there, but I was a little on the busy side.
The sheriff's net was there, and then but there wasn't road closures or anything like that. But the sheriff's net was there as a vendor, more or less.
So really the only question for the Embrace event is whether or not it's going to be held or not. And I spoke with John yesterday and asked him if it was realistic to plan for something, you know, so coming up so soon. And he said there are others that are planning these events. And so I know that I'd asked Ms. Rakowski to go back on one of our meetings to look at whether we had said that we were going to ban events through January or whether or not we were going to take a look at that on a month-to-month basis. And she did take a look at the tape, Mr. Brown, and we had agreed that we would look at events on a month-to-month basis. So if she brings an application to us each month from now until December, we would have an opportunity to approve her event based on COVID conditions as we see things kind of playing out.
Well, there's another part to that conversation as well, as though it would be due to COVID conditions and what their plan would be for social distancing and if masks or anything like that is required. However, also know that we have budgeted improvements to our parks to carry on above and beyond what's going to be handled through the CARES Act to allow for social distancing and distance learning and things like that. So though the construction from the CARES Act will be closed up by the end of November, if there's additional improvements, I don't know, I don't have a timeline of what those additional improvements are going to look like with the construction of our parks and then again with the construction downtown.
So that leads me to make a statement. I don't know if you agree with this or not, Mr. Brown, but I mean, technically speaking, it really just looks like we don't need to host any events until this whole construction thing is over and we get through it. Is that what we're saying?
For the safety, whether it's COVID or not, we still got a safety issue with the place being tore up and people tripping and falling and everything else. And I agree with that. I mean, it's sad that we have to do that, but on the other end, Mayor, when it's all over, look what we're getting. You know, if we can just everybody, a lot of people might be ticked off at us for a little bit, but after they see the final project and what it's going to look like and benefit us a lot more, everybody, I hope, will be happy.
I do too, and we can have a big open house party. I mean, we can try and make up for the closure on the other end with, you know, an event that would celebrate the pain we went through to get to where we really want to be.
Right, I agree.
So for the time being, Ms. Rakowski, I think what Mr. Brown and I are asking you to do is to not fund any events until FDOT has completed their road project and we can safely reopen.
Okay. Then I will move that $10,000 into parks, and then we have a balanced budget, and let's move on to CIP, if that's all right. So we have budgeted, I'm told by the state that we'll get about $211,000 coming into our infrastructure this year. That's what we handle our road projects with. And if you give me just 1 minute, I've got another number that I want to share with you. I just have to find it. I had it right. This is something that was negotiated by Mr. Cornegay, sitting down with the other city managers. And I just want to pull this number out to make you aware of what is happening. So just give me 1 second. I apologize.
Oh, I see where you got it now. Thank you.
You see where you got it?
The 15,000 tucked away.
Oh, okay. All right. There it is. Okay, so that $211,000 that you see right here, the coming in from the income from the state for infrastructure, without Mr. Cornegay sitting down and having an interlocal agreement between us and the other municipalities inside Clay County, that number would be $129,000. Mr. Cornegay was able to negotiate how they split up those revenues over the next couple of years so that we would step down. So as we start budgeting for projects within our CIP, that's something to take into consideration, is that number will become lower as they reevaluated how they the distribution of those funds.
So where do you think we need to start making up for that in our budget?
Well, we do have, again, we have about $300,000 sitting in our infrastructure account. So we are doing okay. We're very smart, I think, on how we spend money within our CIP. That is, for the most part, specifically to our roadway improvements. Mm-hmm. I've proposed that we take out $15,000 for the improvement of a pickleball court over at Sunrise Park, and we can talk about that a little bit, but it's minimal comparatively speaking.
Yeah, I'd really like to get that done.
So with that being said, we have $211,000 coming in for our infrastructure, income from CDs, and then you'll see that we have an in and out for the CARES Act that's going to be a carry forward through the end of this calendar year. Looking at moving down, we have our sidewalk construction. We will be spending every bit of our $7,500 this fiscal year, moving into $7,500 for next fiscal year. Madam Mayor, I do have that list will be ready, I'm told, this afternoon, and it's already clearly marked. As you go walking around, you can probably see the X's on the sidewalks that are planning to be redone within the next
Excellent. Yeah, I'd love to see the list.
Okay. And then our roadway resurfacing project, we have about $207,000 left out of everything for our next roadway. And then we'll end up doing a budget amendment to carry forward what we don't use this year for Azalea Park or Azalea Place.
Okay. Do you know when do you plan to get Azalea Place going?
60% plans are done. We should have 100% plans by the council meeting, and Michael Baker will be here to present at the council meeting to discuss the cemetery and a roadway improvement project.
Excellent, good.
And then we, at the council meeting, we need to start having conversations on next fiscal year's projects as well. We've had conversations about Nelson's Point and how that's going to line up with next fiscal year or the following fiscal year when DOT is done with their project.
Yeah, I'd really like to look at that street.
So. And that's all I have for the budget.
I have a question about the pickleball court.
Yes,
The restrooms that are out there, are they usable?
they will be.
Okay. All right. I knew we had an issue with them. And if we put something like that out there, and even with the people going to the dog park, I mean, that would be nice to have.
Yeah, I think that's being taken care of through the CARES Act. Is that right, Ms. Wachowski?
The fixtures will be taken care of through the CARES Act. And then there was some issues with the flooring. That was one of the projects that Mr. Cornegay was working on. And we were able to finish that up in conjunction with the new fixtures.
Okay. So are we doing my favorite sail shades over the pickleball court?
We absolutely can, probably with the $15,000. So it's something that we'll discuss as I'm waiting on. It's interesting how much detail goes into building a pickleball court, but those are conversations that, depending on which style of pickleball court and what you want that to look, $15,000 will more than cover all of that.
Awesome.
They're going to be Keystone blue.
It could be.
Yay.
It could be purple.
I believe that's your favorite color, right, Ms. Wachowski?
That is correct. So with that being said, those are the budgets. With the changes, I'll make the changes and then present that for first hearing with recommendation of the Budget and Finance Committee, if that's all right.
I totally agree. I think you've done a darn good job.
Yes, I do too.
Thank you.
I think you got everybody's wishes in there.
Yep.
It's going to be a busy year.
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
All right. I have nothing more at this point, Madam.
Okay. Mr. Brown, any more? Any other
No.
questions, conversations?
No.
All righty then. Nice job. I'll see you in just a little while, Ms. Lynn.
All right. Thank you.
Have a
All
good
right.
weekend.
You too.